of the Women Bike program. Brief overview, Women Bike is the first national advocacy campaign aimed towards empowering and engaging women in the bicycle movement, whether that be in helping elevate them to leadership positions on the grassroots level, within retail companies, or in the transportation industry and beyond. And at a more basic level, it's about getting more women and mothers and their families riding in their communities. Also, just wanted to quickly mention that this is our first webinar since the second annual National Women's Bicycling Forum, which was held here in Washington, D.C. last month. I think it's probably safe to assume that some of you listening today were here in D.C. for the forum, and you all agree we heard from a number of great speakers: Jeanette Sada-Khan, Georgina Terry, Congresswoman Tammy Duckworth. I know I had fun perusing the pop-up shop, and women and men from all over the country were able to connect and discuss the issues that served as the seeds of the Women Bike program. And so that kind of brings us back to today's program. Martina and Megan both were panelists on different topics at the forum in March, and Kit was at the first annual forum in Long Beach talking about a lot of the work that she'll be discussing today as well. Quickly wanted to give some shout outs to our leading sponsors of the Women Bike program. Without their generous support, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the programs and things that we're able to put on every day. So thank you to Live Giant, Gail Copus Span and Jim Span, Velo Joy, SRAM, Fuji, Bicycle Times Magazine, and Team Estrogen. Thank you to them. And so some quick programming notes. There will be a Q&A session after our three presenters have their chance to speak. What you'll need to do is type questions into the box you see through the interface. It's just a questions box. You type in there and I'll be able to see those. If you're not seeing that box, on the right-hand side there is a smaller gray vertical box with an arrow, an orange arrow. If you click that, that should open up the panel where you'll be able to find the questions box. So please, as the program goes along, feel free to generate those questions that we'll be able to share with our presenters later on. And also, please stay tuned for the end where we can share some more great things that Women Bike is planning in future months. So that's enough of me. Martina, we will start with you.
Okay, sorry about that. It automatically pops back in non-presentation mode. Okay. So, hi, my name is Martina Fahrner, and I actually crashed my bike the first time I rode with a front seat, with a kid's front seat actually, but my son was not on my bike. And about 10 years ago, I was yelled at by an SUV mom that she would call CPS on me when I rode with my son in San Francisco. And when I started to ride with my buck feet 7 years ago in Portland, parents with kids would actually chase me down and ask me where they could buy one. And my then 3-year-old son was my best little PR person because he told them very proudly that they can buy it from us, Clever Cycles. And Clever Cycles is the bike shop that I co-founded in 2007. And other bike shops really sneered at us when we started to install kid seats on bikes, but they also sent us all the families who were interested, so it was good for us. And now family biking has really become a movement, and it's really, really wonderful, but we also have a lot of work ahead of us. Evangelists and beginners. I actually intend my presentation a little bit for both, for the evangelists amongst you who want to get friends and other families into cycling, and all you riders who are kind of interested but a little bit concerned about the entire concept. And I based my presentation on the Kidical Mass Bike Survey, and I'm pretty sure that Megan is going to mention and talk more about that later on. And I also think there might be a link somewhere in our webinar that you can later link onto this survey. And it's a really great resource. And yeah, please do read it through. And the interesting thing is that it really overlapped with a lot of the stuff I tell my customers and my clients. And so I thought I'd give you my spiel, either so you can give it to other families or also use it as your own resource. Okay, one of the most important things is safety. And actually the sentence, nobody wants to hit the pink fluffy bunny, doesn't really make a lot of sense, but in a way it describes the biggest nightmare that most drivers have. Because who can think of anything worse than a driver hitting a kid? And in general, research showed that drivers ride much slower and much more considerate. Drivers drive much more considerate when they're around kids. So bringing your kids on the street actually has great advantages. There's also another thesis that I just want to throw out there, and it sounds a little bit provocative, but take it with a grain of salt. So I'm in the bike business for 6 years now, and I have a Google search set up on my morning news page for bikes. And in 6 years, I haven't heard about any deadly family biking accidents yet. And there's no car company perhaps in the world, but definitely in the US, that has a safety record like that. Actually, most deadly car accidents don't even make it in the news anymore. And for instance, in 2010, there were 32,885 of them. So just think about that. If you think about safety, if you think about what we used to, and if you think about bikes, and it's quite staggering. So, but how do you make biking safe for your family? It's actually pretty easy. So what I always recommend is that if you buy a product, look for the CPSC stamp, or for any European testing stamps. So a very famous label is the TÜV, that's the Technische Überwachungsverein from Europe. That's actually the German product testing instance. And yes, sometimes these products are more expensive than Chinese copies, or less expensive, normally Asian products, but it gives you at least a little bit of the security and the peace of mind that the products were tested. So even if they are more expensive, I think it's really worth to invest in that. And the other instance that you really have to trust is your own gut, because you need to be comfortable and safe when you ride with your kids. And if you do not feel comfortable, do not do it. And nobody should be really influencing you with this decision. So please be really aware of it. If you want to, get your friends into biking, do not talk them over. Really listen to their concern, because I can tell you, I feel safe on my back feet, I felt safe on my long tail. But that is really a decision each parent has to make by themselves. And sometimes we even have it between couples. Like the mom is a little bit more concerned, the dad is a little bit concerned. Please listen to these concerns and, don't call them chicken. It's really, really important, okay? Well, the next thing. So the next thing that a lot of people are really concerned about is, can I really do it? How long is a mile really? How steep is a hill? And I think sitting in cars most of our lives, we really lost the ability to guesstimate distance and what our bodies can really do. For instance, a mile sounds really, really long if you tell somebody, oh, a mile, bike a mile. But 4 blocks actually sounds pretty doable, and it's the same distance. And sometimes you can actually take much shorter routes with your bike because you don't need to go on the big car streets. And you should definitely try your commute and the distance you want to cover first with a bike and just see if you can do it and not just, dismiss it right away. The other thing is that we also are really not very good at anymore is what we can really do with our bodies. Because, in a gym, leg pressing 100 pounds is really not that bad. But climbing hills suddenly becomes this giant problem when we're faced with it. And it's really not any different. So again, we really just have to try it out. And the most amazing thing with bikes is also, if you are on a hill and you don't make it, there's always the option that you can get off the bike and push it. You can't do that with a car. The other, another thing is that our bodies will get stronger, and if you're patient, you really, really will succeed. It's like losing weight or getting fit, ding, 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 ding. It just takes a little bit of time, and it's not like turning a car key. But from my own experience, I can tell you, like, the first time you tackle this one hill, that is so amazing. That is going to put you in such a overjoy of spirit that it's really, really, really worth it. And I think that also can open your eyes to the deeper aspects of cycling. That is really that it brings this joy back to your life, this adventure. It's just absolutely awesome. Okay, on to the next one. So here comes the point where you have to take what I say a little bit with a grain of salt. I'm a bike dealer, and I don't want to mention any brands, but I just want to kind of warn you a little bit about the two-sided sword of the internet when it comes to buying bikes. A lot of you see like all these very, very cool bikes out of there, and they're sometimes not offered in the US. And normally what we all say is that you really, really should test ride the bike that you want to buy with your family. And I do understand there are problems, and I do understand they're not always available, but there's really nothing better than test riding. But if you are online and you find a bike you like, please make sure that there's a US dealer or distributor. Because if there is not, that means that this firm might not have liability coverage for the US. It also means that customer service will be much more difficult, because you would have, in the worst case scenario, correspond with Denmark, with Sweden, with the Netherlands. And that becomes specifically difficult if you have an electric assist. Because again, user manuals, standards might be totally different. So please, please keep that in mind. Another thing that you should definitely check out is make connection to your local bike shop and actually ask them if they would be willing to work on such a bike, because again, it might mean European tools, it might mean things that they never ever worked with, so you really need to be a little bit sensitive with that, and you can really save yourself a lot of worries if you figure out a bike shop first and if you look for these things. And again, it's specifically important when you get an electric assist. So I just wanted to tell you about one example that we had. So this is a Mama Shari. That's the bike you see on the photo. And Mama Sharis are really, really popular in Japan, and people totally love them there. But he is like a key issue that, for instance, for Clever Cycles, made it a bike that we didn't choose to import, because in Japan, most people ride them on the sidewalk. and they're actually laid out for really slow speeds and for low efficiency when it comes to pedaling, and for really short riders, because Japanese women are on average like 5 feet. So in our eyes, made it not such a good bike to import, because we thought that American riders would get really frustrated with riding position due to the efficiency, that they would be not fast enough to ride them actually in traffic. So we chose not to import them. But it doesn't mean that they're not great bikes, because if you believe in it, I mean, that's how we started Clever Cycles, because we believed in Dutch bikes and we started to import them. So if you really feel strongly about something, go ahead, give it a go. And I mean, that's also how, for instance, the Madsen Long John came into life, because the maker in Colorado really believed that he had a good product. So look into it, and if you feel strongly about it, give it a go. So now we come to the industry, and you heard Liz introduce me that I was at the Women's Forum, and I can't tell you how frustrated we all were when there was a big GM from a big brand, and she talked about women's work equity in the bike industry and their commitment to their women's brand. But she also then mentioned that they would never consider to build a bike with a wheel smaller than 26 inches. And for the average woman of 5'4" in America, that means that most of us could not ride those bikes, and that was really hard to hear. And so when I put this presentation together, I just looked for images, and those two images are the images of the two leading bike brands in America. So it kind of gives you an idea where we are. And one of the reasons that we are overlooked as women and as families is that we are considered a niche market, and that the liability for this niche market is way too high in comparison to the money that can be made of us. But there are brands, and I'm not going to mention any names, that make really great family bike options that we should support, and you will hear the names during the other the other presentations. But again, I'm partial, so I didn't feel comfortable about mentioning. The other thing we really need to look at is that we need to work together for better products, that we need to give feedback to the bike firms, that we need to be there, and that we need to be vocal. So do organize cargo bike road calls, and please support any family bike project on Kickstarter or other microfinancing sites, and there are a lot of out of them. That's again where we can vote with our wallets. And I also think that the League of American Cyclists can be a great sounding board for better products. Well, thanks for listening. That was about everything from me. And this is my email. I'm always happy to help. I'm always out there like writing a lot of emails. So if you have questions about what the best bike is for you, write me an email or friend me on Facebook. I'd be delighted to help you. Okay? That's all.
All right. Thank you very much, Martina. Next up, we have Megan Odett, who, like I said earlier, is the founder of Kidical Mass DC. So she will be talking about her organization and also about the Family Biking Survey. So Megan, you can kick it off whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, everyone who's listening in on this webinar today, and thank you to the Bike League for giving us all a chance to talk about this issue. So I am the founder of Kidical Mass in DC. Kidical Mass is actually a a national movement to promote safe city cycling for parents and children. It was founded in 2008 by a couple of Safe Routes to School coordinators in Eugene, Oregon, and it has been growing by leaps and bounds every year since then. I think there are Kidical mass rides now in 26 plus cities throughout the U.S., and I think there are even a couple of rides internationally. So it's been really exciting to see this movement taking off, and I think it demonstrates that there's a real interest and need and hunger in people who want to bike with their children and are just looking for networks and support to try to do that within a community. Okay, these are my favorite people to ride with. This is some different pictures of my son and my dog on my bike at various points in our lives. I started out, before my son was born, before I even acquired the dog, I started out as a bike commuter. I was what cycling advocates would have called strong and fearless. I learned how to ride as a vehicular cyclist, and because I was biking in a lot of areas without bike infrastructure, I got really comfortable riding fairly assertively. And as you can see, the dog was actually my first passenger. When I moved to Washington, D.C., I bought a trailer and I hauled him everywhere with me around D.C. After my son was born, I had a pretty bad pregnancy, and he was born amidst a series of life-threatening complications that it took both of us a while to recover from. So for me, getting on a bike with my son again after all that was kind of a way to reaffirm my identity, to remind myself of who I'd been before I had this baby who was now sucking away all my time. And it was also just a great way to get back in shape and share some adventures with him. And you can see in these pictures that I went through a lot of different configurations biking with both my son and my dog. There's the trailer, there's the front-mounted seat. My favorite is probably the front-mounted seat and the trailer with the kid and the dog and the hybrid bike. But eventually, the hybrid kind of started to fail under some of the stresses that I was putting it under, so I bought a long-tail cargo bike, and you can see I moved from a front-mounted seat to a rear-mounted seat with a front rack. And I'm going to address a little bit later some of the permutations that people who want to bike with their kids go through as their children move through different ages, and how much of a struggle it can be to determine what the right equipment is, and then once you think you've figured out what the right equipment is, often using online resources, as Martina mentioned, then the next struggle is acquiring them through your local bike shop and then determining if those are really the right choices for you. So after I had been biking with my son for a while, I started noticing a lot of other people in D.C. biking with their kids. And I really wanted to create a way for the parents biking with their kids in D.C. to join together in a community and share their information with each other and, you know, sometimes reassure each other that we weren't all crazy infanticidal maniacs for wanting to bike on the streets with our kids. So in spring of 2011, I started the first Kidical Mass bike ride, and we did monthly bike rides between April and October. We went to different places around D.C. We went to the White House. We took our picture in front of the White House, as you can see, and it was really a great time. But I was noticing that I was still seeing a lot of the same questions popping up in a lot of different places. There was no real central place to go in D.C. if you wanted to know what kind of bike seat people liked, or what bike shops sold the kind of bike seat that you liked, or if you wanted a specialty kind of product, where would you go to get it? So I started thinking about doing some kind of expo to show off, you know, what the different products were, especially the really useful but kind of obscure ones, like some of the specialty cargo bikes, and to give people a chance to find out where they could go to buy these things, because I thought, you know, it was really in the interest of the family biking community to highlight the bike shops that were taking the risk of stocking this equipment. At the same time that I was thinking about that, the Safe Routes to School coordinator for the District of Columbia, Jennifer Heffron, approached me and told me that some parents at a school that she worked with for Safe Routes had been interested in having DDOT, the District Department of Transportation, or the Washington Area Bicyclist Association, WABA, come and teach them how to organize bike trains so that they could all, their children could bike to school together. So Jennifer and I combined those two ideas, and we created an event that ended up being called the ABCs of Family Biking. And the first ABCs of Family Biking was in spring 2012. It was kind of a, hey, let's fix up the old barn and put on a show affair. So we really just threw things together and wanted to see how it would work. Would anybody come? And a couple of people in the community told us that we'd be lucky if we got 100 people showing up. And it turned out that actually 150 people showed up. We got great conversation about it. Everybody who came really enjoyed themselves. And I think for a lot of parent cyclists, it was really their first time, their first opportunity to get together and just exchange ideas and stories with other parents. And it was really, to me, the most amazing thing, because I thought I had a pretty good handle on, who was biking with their kids in DC and what they were riding. So the most amazing thing to me was to see people who I had never seen before rolling up on these fabulous long tails and box bikes with like wooden seats that they had built themselves. And it was really a great time, and it was a pretty bare bones event. We're trying to correct that a little bit more this year. The ABCs of Family Biking 2013 is just a couple of weeks away, and we're trying to make it more sophisticated this year with crazy stuff like signs and bathrooms. But it was really a great start, and as a way of dipping our toes into the waters, was a great demonstration that there is interest and need for this kind of event within the community. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the ABCs of Family Biking in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to jump forward to earlier this spring when I had the honor of being invited to speak at the Women's Bicycling Forum. And I was asked to speak about family cycling and advocacy, and I wanted to speak truthfully about some of the considerations I'd had as a mother getting out on my bike with my son, but I also wanted to represent accurately some of the other needs and interests of other members of the family biking community around the country. So I created this survey and put it up in a couple of places. I put it up in some Facebook groups that I knew. I sent it out to people who were on the Kidical Mass email list, just asking people some of their thoughts on biking with their children. And I mean, I'd hoped to get something like 20 responses, just enough to check my assumptions about biking with kids and make sure that I wasn't misrepresenting the community when I spoke in front of the audience at the Women's Biking Forum. And it mushroomed into a really significant portrait of how parents bike with their kids in the U.S. and abroad. You can see that I had people from 21 states, 4 countries. As of February 28th, I had 96 respondents. That's now well over 100 respondents. The survey is still open. Excuse me. So if you go to the Kidical Mass DC website and click on the page for the Family Biking Survey, there's a link there, and you can take the survey. And you can also send it around to members of your community, and I will send you the responses for your community if that's something you're interested in doing. And I learned, and it was interesting to me to see where my assumptions were borne out and where they were contradicted. So, for example, one question I asked was, what are the obstacles that keep you from biking with your children more often? And I guess this is a good time to point out that the audience for this survey was people who are already biking with their kids. So this is really the dedicated core parent cyclists who are answering these questions. I think that if we gave this survey to any parent on the street, mom and pop minivan, we might get some very different answers on why they would or would not bike with their kids. But this is what dedicated parent cyclists told me. To me, the most interesting answers in the survey were the ones where men's responses differed significantly from women's responses. And Microsoft Excel chose to give red to women and blue to men, so that's not me reinforcing gender norms there. I just want to put that out there. But for example, in this question, you can see that men and women are almost equally concerned about safety. In equal measures, they find safety an obstacle that might keep them off of their bikes. And that's things like, bad infrastructure, or if they just don't feel good about biking with their kids to any particular destination. But if you look just below safety, you can see that women cite distance as an obstacle much more than men do. Excuse me. And another area where women differ from men is under effort, and that's shorthand for basically the effort is too much for you to ride. And that's actually one of my personal struggles because I'm not very tall, I'm not very strong, I don't have electric assist on my bike. So, the fact that some places are far away, the fact that we live on top of a very big hill keeps me off of my bike more than I'd like. And to me, this was an interesting portrait of why, when we don't bike, we don't bike. And one of the conclusions I drew from this is that electric assist is actually going to do a lot to help get women cycling with children. And then another question that had some interesting disparities in it was what organizations, groups, or programs helped you learn about bicycling with your children? And you can see again that men and women are pretty close together on friends, and that was really framed as like a friends and peers, so that's kind of a word of mouth thing there. But then if you look at the next most popular answers, men were much more likely to refer to their bike association or their bike advocacy group as being a helpful resource, and women were much more likely to cite online sources as being helpful when they were first learning about biking with their kids. And, excuse me, a lot of people referred to a couple of specific websites, totcycle.com and the Revolutions Per Minute Facebook group. But I think that the issue that Martina raised before about, the dangers of just choosing your bike online are still very, very relevant, and that's why I think it's important to have these kind of expo or roll call or family biking in-person events, so that before you go to all the trouble of special ordering a $600 trailer at the bike shop and then finding out that your kid absolutely hates being in a trailer, you get a chance to try that out and find out what works for you and your children before investing a lot of money. And I just want to mention that the survey results are in 2 parts, and I believe they'll be downloadable on the Bike League webinar page after this webinar has been posted online. So you'll actually be able to see the responses to a lot more questions and some of the qualitative responses, that is text answers to questions that will, I think, illuminate these graphs even more. Interestingly, nearly all the respondents to the survey commented that they would have liked more information when they first started bicycling with their children. And I think that indicates that there is room for action and for improvement within the cycling advocacy world, whether that's grassroots organizations like Kidical Mass, or whether that's the professional bike advocates like WABA here in DC or the San Francisco Bike Coalition, for example. So just going back to the ABCs of family biking, when we were first putting this together, Jenny and I determined that there were really 3 key factors without which the event really would have been a no-go. And the first was the peer-to-peer learning, which is kind of a show-and-tell aspect, and that is parents who bike with their kids. We invited parents who bike with their kids to just show up at the event with their equipment to talk to other parents. And I think I mentioned at the Women's Biking Forum that parents, and in particular mothers, are being marketed to all the time by, by companies who want them to spend their money with them for almost any product you can think of. So we've kind of, I think, learned to tune a lot of that out. The people we do listen to are other parents. So being able to get parents speaking to other parents on a peer-to-peer basis, I think gives family cycling a lot more authority and gives it a lot more authenticity than if it's just, the bike association or the bike shop, who of course, in a parent's perception, have a vested interest in selling you on the idea of biking with your kids, telling you biking with your kids is great. So that was the first aspect, and that was really where I did a lot of the heavy lifting for the ABCs of family biking. Because I'd been running Kidical mass rides for about a year, I knew that there was a built-in network, and I also had a pretty good sense of where I could get examples of almost all the different kinds of equipment that I was interested in exhibiting. So I emailed a lot of people saying, hey, I know you ride with a trailer. I'm missing a trailer. Why don't you come to this event? And the second element that we thought was really important was to have bike shops there exhibiting the equipment that they would be able to sell to parents. In DC, we're not lucky enough yet to have a shop like Clever Cycles that really focuses on family cycling. Most shops will have like one rear-mounted bike seat, maybe a trailer. There are a couple of newer shops in DC that are more focused on transportation cycling and everyday cycling, and they sell more cargo bikes and more family biking equipment, but they both have pretty small footprints, so they don't have room to exhibit a really broad variety of equipment. So the other element that I brought to the ABCs of family biking was to invite a couple of these bike shops to show up and to show off some of their most interesting family biking equipment. And that ended up, it was kind of a wow factor, I think, for a lot of the people who were coming to the event, who didn't know about things like Bach feeds and cargo trikes and some of the newer models of child seats that didn't look like, a wraparound bathtub. And it was important to me, as I said before, to be able to highlight the shops that I thought were doing a good job, because I'd like to be able to send business their way as much as possible in order to promote the growth of, more shops selling family biking equipment and good family biking equipment. And then finally, the third element of the ABCs of family biking was really where Jennifer at Safe Routes and WABA made their great contributions, and that was in skills training and confidence building. So Safe Routes and WABA together worked on presenting a bike rodeo, which was, it's kind of an open course that children could drop into and ride around and experience different obstacles, and the WABA instructors would coach them on how to deal with various obstacles. But they also worked together to create a new curriculum for really how to organize and how to ride in a bike train. And that was great because it engaged older independent cyclists, so that the event wasn't all about hauling your infants and your toddlers around in this, this massive Bach feats or whatnot. And it also gave the kids something to do, like a way to be active while the parents were walking around talking to other parents. And I think that once children get a little bit older and are able to cycle independently, having that kind of skills training is a really crucial element to ensuring that they are riding safely on the streets, and that their parents have enough confidence in their cycling skills to actually let them do it. So those were kind of like the deal or no deal aspects of the ABCs of family biking. And last year that was really the core of what we did with a couple of extra things. This year we included all of these elements, and we put in a couple of add-ons as well to give it more of a carnival or celebration atmosphere. So last year we put out a resource guide, and it was pretty basic because I basically ran out of time as the event was approaching. But these are some of the things that people have asked me for over and over again. And I thought it would be nice to have one place where you could find some of this information, an overview of equipment, a survey of bike shops, and we're working on expanding that this year. One place where people can look and see where they can get whatever cool piece of equipment they happened to see in the show and tell at the ABCs of Family Biking. Contact information for show and tell parents so that if the visitors have questions afterwards, they could email the show and tell parents and just get a little bit more information. And then, of course, because the online community has been such a huge factor in helping people learn about how to bike with their children, a list of helpful blogs and other links for places to go online to learn more about cycling with children. Space for test rides was kind of an issue last year. We had a couple of people taking test rides and then veering into the bike rodeo course. So this year we're looking at how to organize our space a little bit differently. A repair clinic was a really nice add-on. There's a really fantastic nonprofit group here in DC called the Bike House that does free bike repairs. Route finding assistance and other organizations, we let Safe Routes set up a table, and Jennifer, the Safe Routes coordinator, offered people some advice on, quieter ways to find their way around the city. This year we're trying something new in the form of a swap or sell, which is kind of was my way of trying to promote more of a better market in used bicycling equipment. And I had asked Martina actually about how people deal with the fact that the barriers to entry to family cycling include the fact that a lot of the equipment is really expensive. And Martina mentioned that in Portland there's actually a really strong used bike and used family cycling equipment market. And she mentioned that some of the box feet that they sell are now on their third owners because they stand up so well to time. So this year we're experimenting with giving people an opportunity to either trade or sell some of the equipment that they either tried out and didn't like or that their children have outgrown. Entertainment and food are just two extra nice things to have at the event this year. We're having, I know this is crazy, we're having a bike-themed puppet show, and we're going to see how that goes. And we're going to try inviting a couple of food trucks. So this year we're definitely expanding the ABCs of Family Biking beyond what we did last year. And it's still very much in the experimental stages. So, we're going to evaluate at the end of this year and see if going bigger worked for us and what's going to work as we look at doing this for a third year in a row. And finally, I'm just going to wrap up by listing the groups that I think it's important to engage when you're working on an event like the ABCs of Family Biking or a Family Biking Expo. And I think it's crucial that you engage parents and not just as an audience, but really as co-creators and co-presenters in the event with you. As I said before, parents will listen to other parents in a way that they might not listen to organizations that they perceive as having an interest in trying to sell them something. The bike shops, obviously, because that's how the parents are going to be acquiring this equipment, and because I really want to promote the idea that selling family cycling equipment is a winning proposition here in DC. So the bike shops are part of my audience for this event as far as I'm concerned. Getting your bike advocacy group on board if you are not. The bike advocacy group can be really helpful in generating what I would call legitimacy for the event. For me, it was very helpful to have both the Safe Routes coordinator and the Washington Area Bicyclist Association on board so that it wasn't just, that crazy lady, Megan Odett, standing in the middle of a parking lot yelling at people that they should really get on bikes with their kids. And then finally, if you can, engaging a school or a school network is another great way to reach out to parents and to demonstrate that this isn't just a fringe movement, that this is really an essential part of their lives and their children's lives. And that you can If you want to engage your school, you can look at talking to the local Safe Routes coordinator. We were very lucky because the school that we work with in DC has a very enthusiastic parent in the PTA who really facilitated a lot of the logistics of getting the event hosted at the school. And this school also has some kind of physical activity committee that has also helped us to promote the event. So if it's possible, engaging the school network and working within the school network can really work to your advantage when you're trying to organize an event like this. So that is everything. Thank you so much for your time today. As I mentioned, the Family Biking Survey is available on the Kidical Mass DC website, and I believe it will also be posted for download on the Bike League website after this webinar is recorded and posted. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Megan. A lot of great information to digest there. And as she said, that will be posted once we have the webinar uploaded to our Women Bike page. Next up, we're hearing from Kit Hodge, who is the Deputy Director for the San Francisco Bicycle Coalition. Quick to note, we've been getting some great questions. Please keep them coming. You can write those in the question box or window, and we'll have a little bit of time.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy.
So that you're wondering who is this person speaking. That's me right there. And let me show you quickly. This is my bike. Sorry, am I muted? No, okay. Currently, they've added another seat in the back, and we live on a big hill and enjoy getting around this way for my younger child. So today I want to talk about our family biking program, and specifically our family biking guide. San Francisco Bicycle Coalition is a 12,000-member nonprofit that promotes biking for everyday transportation in San Francisco. And for many years, we've put a special emphasis on family biking, because we know that it's an important part of growing biking in our city and supporting this particularly sort of vulnerable population. In the past, it has taken the form of various kinds of events for families. Something we did was called Family Day. We still do that, where we sort of bring together families to look at celebrate biking in different ways. And of course, we've also participated in Safe Routes to School program here through a few years, like many organizations in many cities and towns and states. But I think, as many people know out there, these alone are not enough. As more people become interested in biking, the opportunities and the problems sort of unique to family biking are larger and exist outside of these kinds of interventions. And so our challenge is really to help people begin family biking earlier than possible, sooner than their kids get to school, and also to scale. And a lot of the challenges to scale come around information and products. And so I'm going to dive into some of the tactics that we have taken to try and reach more people and to grow the family biking movement here in San Francisco. And as it turns out, our work has definitely seemed to have caught on elsewhere too, so we're realizing that there's national and some actually international interest in this as well. Our family biking guide is part of our family biking program. I'm showing you a screen here of components of it. We have the guide in multiple languages, English, Chinese, and Spanish. We have a number of family biking classes, and those are a 4-part series: biking pregnant, biking with your baby and toddler, freedom from training wheels, which is really about teaching small children how to ride on their own, and then practice training on road with children. And we offer these classes throughout the year. We also, as I said, participate in Safe Routes to School and run an annual San Francisco Bike to School Week, which is actually coming up very soon, and do a few other things. But these are sort of the core of our program. The guide itself has been a sort of a foundational part of this, program as we sort of increasingly formalize it. I actually developed it at home in my off hours. It wasn't something that we had strategized about doing, but when I was pregnant with my second child, I realized that it would be very useful to sort of put together the thoughts and sort of expertise that I developed, but also from other parents into one guide, because I don't know, I'm sure as many of you experienced, the first time you're pregnant or you thought about this, there just isn't a lot of good information collated in one place. There's lots of good information here and there about products or sort of recommendations about how to deal with different kinds of situations, but there isn't a very strong sort of one-stop shop for telling you about sort of what the overall experience is that really walks you through it especially from a point of view of people who are perhaps newer to biking. So this was in my off hours, and brought it to our organization. We decided to take it to the next level. We got more input, and we also decided that it was important to ensure that it was really sound information, of course. And so one strategy we did with that was to engage a medical professional, a family practitioner who practices at the University of California, San Francisco Medical Center, to review the guide to make sure that everything that we were talking about in there was medically sound. We thought this would give it more value to people and also seem more legitimate, which is very important. So I'm sure many people, and questions we continue to get is, is it safe to bike pregnant? Is a very good starting point. Or is it safe to put your child in a car seat in a box seat as opposed to without a helmet, for example? So these are things that we definitely wanted to get advice on and medical perspective on. And so we released this guide, I think, about a year and a half ago at this point. You can see on the screen here we have English, Spanish, and Chinese. And I'm going to show you the full screen here of the contents, which ranges from biking pregnant, biking with babies, biking with toddlers, biking to school, and teaching your child to bike. And a big part of the guide has definitely been helping people understand the different kinds of gear and products involved. And we try to keep this very straightforward, friendly, and very accessible, not too long, not too off-putting, not too heavy gear. But what we quickly realized after we released this guide was that people, busy parents, really want to have opportunities to talk about the stuff in person. So we launched a family biking class series. And as you can see here, what we learned from that pretty quickly is that the pregnancy classes, when we had them by themselves, turned out to be information that people better appreciated online. The classes themselves became more of a sort of support group kind of feeling. People just wanted to know what they're doing, wasn't crazy. And I think that's increasingly well recognized and supported, but there's a lot of people showing up saying, I haven't been told my mother that I'm doing this. I think she's going to frown upon it. What do I tell her? Can I do this? Is it safe? And so it's just a safe space for people to talk through those concerns and to sort of support each other and see what's ahead. But I think what we learned from that was that a standalone class probably wasn't that effective for this kind of discussion, unlike some of the other classes. And that what we want to do in the future is better integrate this information with more, local and national sort of resources for pregnant women and families for that matter, so they have that information at their fingertips. Because a lot of the information out there right now is much more geared towards information about sort of fast recreational cycling and what to do if you get pregnant in those cases. With the family, the baby and toddler classes, that was a very different story. Those have been very popular. And the reason they're popular, is you're probably picking up from the other discussions, is the gear. People want to touch the gear, they want to shake it, they want to put their kid on it, they want to know what's going on, and it's really much less about kind of skills and sort of parent management trips, like do you bring your kids lovey on the bike or not? How do you do that safely? Than it is about touching the bikes. And this is a really, really big deal for people, and the reality is, of course, that the industry is not quite caught up to that need, but for a lot of people this is absolutely new information. They've never seen a box seat before, they've never seen a long-tail bike, they don't know the first thing about electric assist, and so being able to talk about it, touch it, learn the basics is incredibly empowering. So we are aware that the more that we can get these kinds of family bikes in front of people, the better. I don't know about you guys, but I get stopped all the time on the street by people saying, do you like this seat? Do you like that seat? What do you think about this? Where do I buy this? And then for the older kids, what we found was classroom setting was not especially helpful, but rather it was more important to do on-the-road classes. And so we've had families like these families here and these families here who've been out on road and having a great time helping their kids learn how to ride on the street. as preparation for riding to school or just for riding around town. And this is incredibly empowering to families and to kids. They feel incredibly proud of themselves. We've had families show up in the rain to do this and all kinds of other stuff. And I know I'm looking forward to having my my children be able to take these classes when they're older too, because it's very hard to teach your own kids how to do these skills. Oftentimes, it helps to have a class environment. So we're very, very happy to offer these. And I should say that as much as possible, we try to integrate this with all our Safe versus School work, because these are, especially with the older kids, absolutely things that, and the gear, things that people want to know about and need to know about in order to be successful with the Safe versus School program. So the guide really serves as an entry point and also helps us sort of capture people's information about an interest in family biking. Sorry, that's the wrong screen. And then we're able to follow up with them in not awful ways to help them, encourage them to continue family biking or to take the next step, whether it be taking a class, whether it be participating in Back to School Week, what have you, or participating in our Open Streets event here, which is called Sunday Streets. We will continue to evolve the guide as the products evolve, and thankfully, that is happening to some extent. We're really excited to see the number of new products coming online. Just yesterday, or actually last week, had a woman stop me on the street and say, I was riding with my 2 children on my bike, and say, it's amazing how much family biking products involved. I could never have done that with my children. We had to make do with some really substandard situations 10 years ago, and it's great to see that there's so many better options. That said, there's a long way to go with the industry out there, and I'm hoping that the leadership of the national level can really help spur that conversation along, because there's great momentum happening at the bike shop level and happening advocacy group level and volunteer groups like Kidical, which is wonderful, but there's not nearly sort of enough national levels conversation about how to make sure that the product market really speaks to this emerging need. In San Francisco, we are a very hilly city, and so what we're seeing increasingly is that, especially for families with not just 1 kid but 2 or more kids, electric assist is an incredibly popular option and increasingly something that people really want to know about. I'm a convert myself, which I never thought I would be, but we have 1 electric assist family bike and are looking into another one. It's an incredibly confusing market as well for people who are not familiar with the ins and outs of all kinds of engineering stuff. I can't believe how much I've had to learn about different kinds of batteries and drives, what have you. I don't want to know this stuff, I'll be very honest with you guys. I'm hoping that as the industry evolves and we do a better job as sort of conveyors of this information at different levels, that people do not have to become an expert in battery types, but rather can choose a bike that works for them, test ride it, and drive off the lot. So we need to, at this point, sort of take our guide and our class information to the next level by incorporating more information about electric assist family bikes. It's definitely a market that we need to talk about a lot more, and we plan to do so. And then I just want to sort of back up a little bit here. With the guide itself, we don't currently distribute print versions. We often get asked about that. We don't have funding right now to do that, but we do distribute postcards around town, and people have been downloading it from across the country, from across the city, and from across the world, which is really great. Not surprisingly, our family biking work, and especially the guide, has been sort of great opportunities to draw attention to this need and this emerging market. And I think from an advocacy group standpoint has been a really important step towards helping people really understand that this is a very serious growing trend that needs to be paid attention to and nurtured. But as I think Megan pointed out, at the end of the day, I think still at this point most family biking knowledge is disseminated by word of mouth. And so we still trying to cultivate this by equipping more of the folks who are passing along the information with things like this guide or class information in order to tell their friends about it and help spread the word more quickly. As I said, one of our main challenges right now is scale, so that we're not getting stopped on the street asking if we've built the bike feeds ourselves. We are always open to feedback on the guide, and so if you have suggestions for improving it, I'd definitely love to hear it. You're welcome to email me at kit@sfbike.org. That's all I'll say for now.
All right, thank you very much, Kit. Be sure to check out the guide online, and now we will be switching into our question and answer portion of the webinar. We've been getting some questions throughout the presentation. We'll have more than we have time left. We're going till about 4:15, so be sure to check afterward online for any follow-ups there. But first, great question here about outreach efforts in regard to low-income areas, or just generally about affordability. As we saw in a few of your presentations, the equipment and bicycles that are often considered best for family bike riding can be the most expensive. So would any of you like to take a stab at how you can deal with working with more low-income families or mothers and helping them get on their bikes?
So hi, it's Martina. There are really different options, and I mean, you can start with just a bike and a good trailer, and those trailers can be even used. So if you scour garage sales, if you go for a name brand trailer, you're normally pretty safe. We talked about this, the Asian imports versus, you know, name brand trailers. So if you stay with a name brand trailer, you can actually get something good even if it's used, so that should lower your costs. Another thing that we should look into, and perhaps we need some advocacy around, is that a lot of credit unions give car loans. Why not also give bike loans, so that actually you can apply for small household credit and actually get a bike loan to finance your cargo bike.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
this is, oh, excuse me, this is Megan, and after I gave my presentation at the Women's Biking Forum last month, I got some pushback on that, and I actually got some really thoughtful comments from people who work in low-income communities and people of color, because frankly, this family biking right now in the U.S. is very much a middle-class white phenomenon. So I think we can acknowledge that this is the target audience and the core audience right now, but I think all of us want to see family biking and, you know, the health benefits and the economic benefits that come from family biking spread beyond just this core audience. And I don't have all of the answers, but it's interesting that we have a lot of structures in place that allow people to afford even cheap, crappy cars that we don't have to allow people to buy bikes. And Martina mentioned loans at credit unions, which is one possibility. I know Martina had told me that there were a couple of credit unions in Portland that offer loans. I know of one in San Francisco, and I'm told that there's a bike shop that will allow, that has a credit program. It's 6 months no interest or something like that. And I think as advocates for family biking, we need to keep in mind how people can overcome those upfront costs in order to realize the later savings that can come from either supplementing or replacing a car with a bike. And I think that the other helpful thing will be, as you know, as the early adopters buy these items and are able to upgrade, I think that there will be more of a used market, and that was part of what I was trying to promote with this experimental swap or sell thing that we're doing at the ABCs of Family Biking. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I know that cargo bikes are going up on Craigslist in Portland all the time, and hopefully other cities can realize a similar advantage once we start having more and more cargo bikes in our cities.
Other thing I would add, this is Kit, is there's still no real leasing programs that I'm aware of, certainly in San Francisco. Maybe there are that I'm aware of around the world, the nation, and leasing is, I think, a next frontier for making, especially the bigger family bikes, more affordable and accessible to people. The thing I would add is that within immigrant cultures, as opposed to sort of overall low-income cultures, many folks bring particular approaches to family biking that we see on the street a lot, they're fairly different. They don't involve all this fancy gear oftentimes that are just a kid perched on a towel on a down tube, or products that were made in the country of origin. And working within those traditions is a very effective way to help people sort of transition to continuing to do family biking here in the U.S.
Yeah, but we also have to be really incredible sensitive, because cars in a lot of the low-income communities are not just cars. There are, objects of value, and, we've been, the car PR machinery has been really successful in promoting that, and so we really have to be incredible careful, because, again, a car can mean like the one object of value that you can borrow against and so on. So again, let's be really sensitive about it and keep our eyes open to it.
All right, great. Another question we have here, and sort of, Martina, you're saying that a lot of this is, considered a niche market, mothers being on bikes with their children, or just mothers in general. I guess as a question for all of you, have you seen what has the reaction been from those involved in the bicycling industry and the advocacy movement in your communities with regard to these sorts of initiatives to get more mothers biking? Has there been blowback? Has there been support? What is the general sense in your cities?
Well, in Portland, it was, we got some flack from, for instance, from the really radical cyclists insofar as the cyclists that basically behave like cars, which think that it's the weirdest and stupidest idea to put their kids on cars, vehicular cyclists, totally against the idea. And I think we really need to separate the industry from the advocates, because the advocates are behind it, and the industry is flapping somewhere in the wind. And I can't tell you how frustrated I am with that reaction. We had several bike firms who actually made long johns, but then voided warranties if you would install a kid seat on it. And it has been such an uphill battle, and I hope I'm kind of battling with the idea of actually going to Interbike, which I have to attend every year anyway, and actually talk about that at Interbike, and I'll probably get a lot of flack for it, but I really think that that is an issue that we need to bring out and really have a conversation about it.
Yeah, this is Megan, and when I was first starting Kidical, Mass, I did have some trouble getting established bike advocates to listen to me, I guess, and to get behind me. And in fact, I went when
I think we might have lost Megan.
yeah.
Is she there? Okay. I'll just add that until we get Megan back here. San Francisco is actually a city with a fairly low, shockingly low kid and family population here, and so it's definitely something that we've been aware of. But we have, been very much embracing the, 8-year-old to 80 perspective and approach to advocacy and the future biking here in the city. But we had to be very thoughtful about how we make that relevant to other folks. And the reality is that still, even with that low population, many people who started biking when they're single in their 20s are having kids and are starting to see the reality and the desire for this. So I think we've, hit a few bumps, but have largely won support for this vision.
Well, great. until we get Megan back, I have one more question. I think this will be the last one before we have to wrap up with our timeline. The question of electric assist seems to be a popular one recently. I know it was a topic of discussion in Megan's panel during the Women's Forum. There's questions of, is this cheating? What are the rules of the road in terms of e-assist? I guess, Kit, if you don't mind starting off, as a rider of an electric assist bicycle, what is the perception as a mom and as a bicyclist when you're on the road?
Sure. I mean, the main comments I get is that is such a cool setup. And, where can I get that, basically? I think, when people see me riding around with 1 or 2 kids and, a bunch of backpacks on the bike, they understand the need for electric assist. And the reality is we live on a steep hill, and there's no way that I could continue to ride and make biking an essential part of our, commuting lifestyle were it not for that electric assist. And that, for many people in San Francisco, is true, whether or not they have families. So I think especially here compared to a flat place like Chicago, it's going to be very much a part of the conversation, but still a fairly early conversation. As I think opposed to some other places, families are probably at the forefront of that conversation here because you just see a lot more and more family bikes of different kinds with e-assist, aftermarket or before market, popping up at playgrounds. So it's just going to become a more and more part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it's really interesting because my husband actually invented and patented an electric assist while we were living in San Francisco. And so I know it from, and I rode a bike with an electric assist too when I had my son regularly on my bike. But there is such an incredible amount of problematic around this because we get a lot of flack from the car industry who want to make the shipping of batteries very, very hard. That is like one big that we see as dealers. Then, for instance, if you import one of the great electric systems from Europe, you have the problem of the customer service to maintain actually the electric part of your bike. And then again, it's just from a liability standpoint that a lot of regular bike shops feel not comfortable working on them because you literally need an electric engineer or somebody, an electromechanic on staff to fix and troubleshoot that. So I think it's awesome. I don't think it's cheating. About the rules, in most of the states in the U.S., the electric bike has to phase out at a speed of 20, and if it's not a permanent running motor, you're actually absolutely in your right to ride in bike lanes. So it's just a little bit of the legal background, but it's definitely something that is totally awesome and that will help a lot of moms to get on bikes and also to overcome this distance barrier and the hardship barrier of steep hills. But again, it's something we need to advocate for. It's something we basically need to create our own market for it.
All right, great. Thank you both. Megan, looks like we have you back. Would you like to finish your thought on the last question about the reaction to family-centered bicycling initiatives?
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks so much. I don't know what happened there, but I'm back on the phone now, so my connection should be better. What I was starting to say was that when I first approached the bicycling advocacy community in D.C., I kind of had a little bit of trouble getting people to listen to me, and I think it's similar, I think, to why shops don't want to carry family biking equipment, and it's because they think there's not a market. And that was kind of, the person who was most pessimistic about the success of the ABCs of family biking was actually a member of the bike advocacy community here in D.C. So I was delighted to be able to prove that person wrong. And it's been really exciting to see the reaction to women's bicycling initiatives and specifically family bicycling initiatives in the past couple of months as family bicycling has become part of the conversation about women's bicycling. because I would go to the, a couple of the initial conversations about women's bicycling, and hardly anybody who was there had children. And it seemed like the conversation for the first few years of talking about women's bicycling, the conversation would just go, and another reason why women don't bike is because they have kids, and then it would stop there. So I'm excited to see now that the conversation seems to be moving beyond that, and that there seems to be a very strong public reaction demonstrating that people are interested in riding with their children and in getting, helping moms bike with their children.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Glad we got you back. So we're at the end of our time here, but I do want to say thank you again to our speakers and to everyone who participated today. I think we definitely heard a lot of ideas that you'll be able to take home and implement in your own communities to get more moms and families riding. But before we end, I wanted to make a couple notes about Women Bike and where we're going forward. We are still asking for responses to our Women in Equity survey. We released that last week or the end of the week before, and we're asking people involved in these areas of women in equity in terms of bicycling to share their stories and their experiences beginning such initiatives, so we can identify what's working, how we can help others to do, and how to help others to do that in their communities. You can learn more about that and take the brief survey at bikeleague.org/womenbike. In addition, as Women Bike, still very much a growing program here at the League of American Bicyclists, looks beyond the National Women's Bicycling Forum and into other areas of programming this year. We recently unveiled our Growth Fund. So these are mini grants that we are giving out to support and seed campaigns and ideas that are getting more women on bicycles. We know there are plenty of good ideas out there, and we want to help you get them off the ground. So if you check bikeleague.org/womenbike on our funding section of the page, you can look into eligibility and fill out a brief online application. Those grant winners will be announced later this month, so if you're interested, please apply as soon as possible. And then additionally, online, we've been growing our online community on Facebook, facebook.com/womenbike, and on Twitter @womenbike. It's pretty simple. So if you have not yet already liked our Facebook page or followed us on Twitter, please do so, so you can keep abreast of things going on, such as these webinars in the future. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact Carolyn Shapansky, who is the fearless leader of Women Bike, the director of Women Bike and Communications here at Bike League. Her information is there, or you can contact me. It's just liz@bikeleague.org. So that's it for us here on this webinar. Thank you again to our speakers and those who sent in some questions. The recording will be available by the end of the week and posted on the website. So stay tuned for future discussion topics, and thank you again.
The